Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah and this is Jar of Fireflies. Here you will find videos all about my life as an Orthodox Jewish homeschooling mother of three. And today we're continuing on with my conversion story. Today we are speaking about my conversion to Orthodox Judaism. Okay, if you didn't see part one of this conversion story, please go back and watch that first because that is really important and I'm literally picking up where that story leaves off to continue on to my Orthodox conversion. I did a Reform conversion first. That story and all of the background is really important to this. So go back and watch that if you haven't already. But for now, I'm going to assume that you've already seen that. We're going to keep right on going. Okay, so I mentioned at the end of my last video that I was starting to pick up some more learning and things like that. So one of them was to learn Hebrew. Now, the Hebrew teacher there at the Reform Temple came up to me after services. She goes, I hear that you wanted to learn Hebrew. And I was like, yes, I'd love to. And she goes, great, why don't you email me? I don't check my email on Shabbat, but I'll check it after and then we can get you set up in a class. And I was like, fantastic. But I was like, whoa. Wait a minute, people don't check their email on Shabbat? What is this? I was like, that's really cool. So I thought, hey, I'll give that a try. So I quit checking my email on Shabbat. And you know what, you guys? Oh my gosh, I loved it. It was so nice to have a day off of checking my email. So after that, I thought, well, I'll try something else. Maybe I just won't answer the phone on Shabbat. So I quit answering the phone on Shabbat. I just started doing all these little things. Whatever I could do, whatever little thing I could do, I stopped doing. And then I started being all over the internet looking at Shabbat observance. I wanted to learn more about Shabbat observance. What could I learn so that I could observe Shabbat more fully? Because these little things that I was starting to do, like not checking the email or answering the phone, was making a huge difference to me. It was such this lovely day of rest. I was able to focus on my relationship with God and just really just be and enjoy and have like a true day of rest, which is what Shabbat is supposed to be all about. So I was thrilled, I was loving it. And that's like the beginning of the Shabbat observance. So as I was learning more about actual Shabbat observance, I started trying to take on just like a little bit at a time, like one thing here, one thing there, like one thing every week, basically. So it would be something as simple as, like I said, not checking my email and then maybe not adjusting the air conditioner on Shabbat, trying to not turn on and off lights. And maybe it would even be just a certain light. Like I might just leave the kitchen light on, but I could still turn on and off the bedroom light or something like that. Like just really trying to do these little bitty things to bring this Shabbat observance into my life. Now, as I was doing all of this research into Shabbat observance, it was starting to open up this whole new world of Jewish observance that I didn't even know existed. So I slowly started trying to observe more and more and more. And what happened was my relationship with God just started to explode. It was the most amazing feeling. I was absolutely loving how my life was feeling, how I was feeling, how my relationship with God was. Like everything was just absolutely amazing. It was like I discovered something that was missing. I talked in my last video about how I felt like my cup was being filled by Judaism, but maybe not quite all the way. So this was the part that was filling it the rest of the way. All of these rules that I was discovering online were giving Judaism meaning. They were giving it this structure and meaning. It was like I was being provided this way to serve God in everything that I did. And I was it was so great, I'm telling you. So, well, on the one hand, I was so excited and thinking how amazing all of this was. I was also, on the other hand, thinking like, where has this been? Why wasn't I taught this before? I started learning more about kosher food and how eating kosher food was doing more than just nourish your body. It was nourishing your soul. And I was like, whoa, I want this soul food. This is amazing. So since my conversion to Reform Judaism, I had been keeping some sort of a level of like a kosher style of food. I had started, like I had said, I had been kind of slowly taking on certain things. So like I stopped eating ham. I stopped eating eel on sushi. I stopped eating shellfish. Like slowly I had started taking some of these away, but I was discovering more in my research, there was a lot more to it than just kosher style, that kosher style wasn't exactly keeping kosher. And, I wanted the real deal. I wanted everything. So even though most of my friends at the time who were Jewish were either keeping maybe some kind of a kosher style or not keeping kosher at all. They were still, eating pepperoni pizza and shrimp scampi and whatever. Like, it just didn't feel right to me. I don't care what other people do. That is their decision. That's their choice, their life. Totally fine. It's just not what I wanted to do. So like I said, I was doing this kosher style, but I wanted to expand on that. So I started learning about Hectures, that little symbol that's on your packaged food that tells you whether or not it's kosher. So I didn't go and throw away any food or anything like that, but as I would run out of something, I would replace it with something that had a Hecture. I would replace it with something that was kosher. So at one point I stopped eating meat outside of my house, and then I upped that to only eating vegan outside of the house, trying to get closer to this kosher. But I have to tell you, this was a very slow, very long, very drawn out process. So all of the stuff that I'm talking about right now is happening over probably 5 to 6 years. So this was starting to cause a little bit of an issue with friends because food can be a really integral part of relationships. And a lot of our relationships at the time, me and my friends, it was going out to eat as a group or enjoying a Shabbat dinner together at somebody's house or something like that. And when I'm not eating any of the food, I'm not really fully there and participating like everybody else. And at the same time, while I'm not intending for them to take it this way, like some people would take it as I think that they're not being Jewish right. And that was completely not my intention, and I never said anything to anyone about their observance, but I just had my choices. But sometimes whatever choices that we make can make someone else feel something, even though we don't intend to or care what they do. Okay, I get to the point where I decide I want to kosher my kitchen. I want it to be fully kosher. So I asked the rabbi at the temple, I said, who do I talk to about koshering my kitchen? Of course, I've done a lot of research about this online, so I feel like I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit. And the rabbi tells me, and again, this is a Reform temple, it's not Orthodox, so there's some major theological differences there. But anyways, the rabbi tells me, he goes, nope, you just need to pick what dishes you want to keep for meat and dairy and you're good to go. And I was like, no, pretty sure there's more involved there, like a blowtorch, So at this point I'm thinking okay, I really can't bring my Jewish questions to these rabbis that I know here anymore. And that was pretty major for me because that really showed me that I was not where I needed to be. So I really didn't know where to find a rabbi to help me kosher my kitchen, so I just decided to do it myself. So I did copious amounts of research online, got rid of everything that could not be koshered, followed instructions that I found online for things that could be koshered, and just did my best. Okay, so then I'm continuing to grow. I start learning about tzniut, about modesty in dress, and I started buying long skirts. I stopped wearing jeans mostly-ish, just that wasn't gonna be my first choice. And trying to buy sleeves on my shirt that were longer, collars that were higher, just trying to work more towards that. I definitely wore a lot of sundresses with little cardigans and things like that, and tried to have a lot of fun with it. There's definitely a bit of a learning curve trying to find my style. So looking back, my style has changed a lot over the last 15 years since this whole journey started. I started ordering some clothes off of Jewish websites, like religious Jewish websites and things like that. And, at one point I remember this guy asked me, he goes, are you Orthodox? And I said, no, of course not. And I was like, why would you think that? And he goes, well, the way you're dressed. And I was like, well, I guess he's kind of got a point there. Okay, now let's talk about dating. I had started to get asked out on a lot of dates, and I was seeing that these weren't the kinds of guys that I wanted to date. I wanted someone who was going to keep kosher because I was trying to keep kosher. I wanted someone who was interested in Shabbat observance because I was interested in Shabbat observance. I wanted someone who was a little bit more on the same page as me. And if anything, I wanted someone who was already there because I wanted to grow to be this observant Jew. So having an observant Jew as a partner made a lot more sense to me than the kinds of guys that were asking me out at the time. So I got on this Jewish dating website and was talking to, only the religious guys. And one of them, who was a rabbi, we were just kind of chatting. He was asking me a few questions about my conversion, and he goes, oh, so you're not Jewish? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, well, tell me a little bit more about your conversion. He asked me a couple of questions. I answered them. And he goes, well, that's not a halakhic conversion. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this kind of makes sense. You know, I mean, first of all, I was devastated because I was having this realization, and I think I cried for like 3 days. It was really terrible. I mean, it made sense to me when everything else that they had been telling me, like about keeping kosher, that, you know, oh, I could just do it this way, which was not the halakhic way to do things. And about the mikveh, saying nobody ever does the mikveh anymore. Like, no, those things aren't true. So it made sense that also my conversion wouldn't have been halakhically valid. So this was really devastating news to me. It was very sad. And you know, I was very sad for a few days. There was a lot of tears. And then I was like, you know what? Okay, it is time to fix this. Like, that's how I looked at it. I looked at it as fixing it. Okay, so at this point, I start calling the synagogues again, but I'm only calling the Orthodox ones. So I finally spoke with this one rabbi at an Orthodox synagogue who got me in touch with a different Orthodox rabbi who was doing some classes for people who were interested in conversion. So I jumped in midway in this class after having a meeting with one of the rabbis who was teaching the class, and continued on from there. So I basically was starting the whole process over again. Now, because I had done so much research and was really already pretty far ahead in my observance, you know, I was dressing already with the skirts and the longer sleeves and things like that. I was keeping kosher to the best of my ability. I was observing Shabbat pretty far along at this point. I mean, not completely, but I was very far along in my Shabbat observance at this point. You know, I did not live in a Jewish community, but I was doing my best where I was. I got invited to the community for a meal and to attend services. So I went out and I did that. I started meeting people. You know, I was trying to get a little involved there and continuing on with these classes, continuing to talk with these rabbis, continuing to learn. But I was frustrated also. You know, because like I said, I came in here already knowing quite a bit, and I felt like the people that I was in the class with were kind of starting more from scratch. And it was almost all couples as well. If I recall correctly, I was the only single person who was taking the class. Like, everybody was part of a couple. So it was either they were converting because they wanted to get married, or because they were already part of a couple and wanted the spouse to convert, or because they were a couple who was together converting to Judaism. So I was like the single person, and that's just kind of a different category. It's just a little bit different when you're converting by yourself versus when you're converting with a partner, whether your partner is already Jewish or not. You know, it's just that built-in support system isn't there. So I really wanted more progress. I felt like this wasn't exactly right for me. So then I ended up I stopped going to the classes. I was getting very, very frustrated. I felt like things were going nowhere. I felt really done. I was really just emotionally done. And one of the rabbis called me and he was like, we haven't seen you, what's going on? And I told him, I was like, I'm so frustrated. It was a very, I'm not sure how to describe this conversation. I'm pretty sure that I cussed a lot. I was not happy. I was really mad. And looking back, I'm kind of like, why was I even so mad? Why didn't I just advocate for myself from the beginning? But this rabbi is really fantastic, actually. He just kind of rolls with it. I think if I'd spoken with anybody else, it probably wouldn't have gone as well as it did. He was like, you know what, why don't you come in person and let's talk? And we got together in person and we talked. And I'd been going through some stuff in my personal life as well that was kind of adding on to this. And we talked about all of it. I was crying, and you know, so conversion is a very emotional thing. So he was like, okay, I tell you what we need to do. And so we made a new game plan. And I was really happy with this. Okay, so with the new game plan, I met with the rabbi who was basically like, he would be the one who would sign off on my conversion, kind of like the top rabbi in our community. So I met with him. And he also was going to set me up with some different learning. He said, stop coming to the class. He says, don't come back to the class. So he was going to help me get some different learning, some like one-on-one learning with some people. So we were going to work on that. So, okay. So I go and I meet with the rabbi who's in charge of the community. Basically, I don't really know how else to describe him. So I go and I meet with this rabbi who would be signing off on my conversion, and we sit down and we chat. And you know, we had a really good conversation. I really liked him a lot. We really hit it off there from the start. And he said, you know what, you're really at a point in your conversion where you are at a standstill. You're right, you're not progressing until you move into the community. And I was like, oh, I have to move. But I like my place downtown, you know? So I left and I was like, he wants me to move? This is crazy. But I got home, I slept on it, and I was like, okay, if moving's what it's gonna take, then moving's what's gonna have to happen. So I called my landlord and I was like, I was just honest with him. I explained the situation. I said, I'm trying to convert to Judaism. I need to move into the Jewish community. And he was really cool. And he goes, you know what? Okay, so you can't break your lease, but it's okay with me if you'd like to sublet your place. So I put out an ad on Craigslist or something. I found somebody to sublet my place, and he was ready to move in right away. I was ready to move out right away. I found a place in the Jewish community, which was exactly where my rabbi, like, he literally told me what street to move in on. So everything happened so fast. We're literally 2 weeks after my meeting with that rabbi. I came back and to visit with him. And I said, okay, so I live in the community now. He was like, what? I was like, yeah, I sublet my place and I moved into one of those places you told me about. So he was like, okay then. So he set me up with a meal that Shabbat so that I could start meeting some of my neighbors. You know, I was set up with some other women in the community there that I could learn with one-on-one. So I was learning several times a week with different women there in the community on different topics, and a lot of just really great conversations about Jewish life, about real observance. I was learning about kashrut. I was learning, you know, the 13 principles. I was learning all these really important topics to Judaism, and I was feeling great. And all this time I was continuing to meet with that same rabbi who would be signing off on my conversion so that he could get to know me better and be more comfortable with signing off on my conversion. Okay, now I have to interject here and say that conversion really is a very hard experience. It was not easy. It was very emotional. It was hard to go through it alone. There were certain times where I felt like people in the community were very insensitive to me as a convert, you know, asking me to do things on Shabbat, things like that, where yes, as someone who wasn't halakhically Jewish, I was not allowed to fully observe Shabbat. However, I didn't want to, and nor did I need to publicly break Shabbat. So there were some challenging times for sure. And I don't really want to get into that in this video, like exactly particulars of those. But I just want to say like that there were definitely some ups and downs, you know, you're changing your life for sure. It's a big deal. And, you know, especially as I was drawing closer to my actual conversion day, the positives were massively outweighing the negatives. Like there was no contest. So overall, like, again, totally glad I did it, obviously, but it was definitely not always easy. Okay, so as my conversion was drawing closer and I was feeling such a part of the community, but I was still not there. I still wasn't Jewish. And that whole thought just really, it was very heartbreaking for me. It was very hard to have that feeling of not being fully Jewish. So I was very eager to get that going. So I sat down with my rabbi and I was like, what are you waiting for? Why aren't we doing it now? And he's like, we're waiting. I was like, what do you mean we're waiting? He's like, we're waiting. I was like, so we're waiting for the sake of waiting. He's like, we're waiting. I was like, oh, it was so frustrating, but it's okay. I mean, he's signing off on my conversion. Like, he needs to be totally sure. He needs to know that I'm not just gonna up and disappear one day. So I get that. It's fine. All right, so then I finally get the phone call. My rabbi calls me and he tells me that we're gonna convert next week. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? Next week? I was so excited. Now, this was a really big deal. So there were going to be about 7 of us that were going through the conversion process that day, and they were bringing in another really big rabbi from out of town, from Detroit, and he was going to be there to sit on the Beit Din, on the court, to sign off as well on our conversions. So yeah, this was going to be huge. We have never done anything like that in my community before, and I don't believe we will ever do anything like that in my community again. Okay, now we're up to the actual day of my conversion, and we're gonna make this another separate video because I want to tell you the entire story of that day, and then I'll round out the story. So this whole series is going to be 3 videos long. Okay, I'm going to go back and add that to the first video. All right, thank you all so much for watching today. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Be sure to ask me any questions there in the comments below that you may have. I would love to get this conversation going with you. All right, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in my next upload where we're talking my actual conversion day. A day that is filled with drama and excitement.